I hope you'll join me sketching this beautiful 1935 Morris 8. My name's Liz Chatterton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire. Every week I share tips and tricks about watercolour, and every month I share a sketching challenge. Usually I try and film those actually on location and do it so that it's like we're sketching together. We're sketch buddies. But it is January. It is cold and I'm just not feeling that hardy. So I'm doing this sketch in my studio. I'm trying to keep the mindset and the spontaneity that you get from actually sketching on location. I call these challenges Sketch with Liz. So if you want to have a go and you decide to share it online, please use the hashtag Sketch with Liz, because then it'll pop up in my feed and I can comment and share. And you can search for Sketch with Liz and you can see what other people have done. And I love seeing all the different versions. So together it's like we're a virtual global sketch club. This car belongs to my brother-in-law and he very kindly has given us a little tour around.
1935 Morris 8. Quintessentially 1930s design and styling with its cute honeycomb radiator front, fold down windscreen. Back in the day it would have cost £118, about the same as a tank of petrol. It put Morris Motors back on the map as a major motor manufacturer. It was to Morris what the Golf was to Volkswagen. And what do you make of this? This was a major selling point back in 1935. An electric windscreen wiper. Only one, mind.
Right, I'm going to pretend that I'm sitting outside a nice pub on a summer's day and I've got my sketchbook with me, got a drink, there's a handy bench for me to sit at. I've seen this lovely car and I've decided to do a quick sketch. So I'm getting myself into the mindset even though I am sitting in my studio. I've got a piece of watercolour paper here. It is roughly 32 centimetres by 25, that's 13 inches by 10. It's Hannah Muller Harmony and it's hot press paper, which I rarely use. So I thought, well, I'm in my studio, I can use something I don't usually use. I'm going to sketch the car out because there are all sorts of weird angles going on here. It's very foreshortened. And I'm going to use this brush pen. It is actually from W.H. Smith's, but it's the equivalent of a Tombow dual tip pen. One end a brush, other end a bullet nib. And I generally think that if you use a pen, it makes you more decisive than if you use a pencil. You always have that thing with a pencil. Oh, I can just rub out the line. Now this is totally water soluble, so any marks I put now will disappear into my washes, but I will be more decisive because I'm using a pen. And I'm holding it quite a long way down the barrel so I get a nice loose mark. I've got this printed out. I will leave it on the screen as much as possible so that you can refer to it. But what we need to check is, I say, all sorts of angles. Now, I looked at this and I feel like it's at that angle, but actually when I put my pen across it, it's only at just off the horizontal. If I measure, say, this wheel and put it there, the back of the car is actually equivalent to the width of the wheel, and that doesn't feel right. It feels like it should be far bigger. Look here, so it's roughly divided into thirds, a third, a third, a third. That wheel is slightly taller than it is wider, which is what it looks like. And we've obviously got this gorgeous little fold down windscreen, as Pete was telling us. My photo hasn't printed out well. There is a beautiful hood ornament here, so I need to make sure that goes in. Doing a bit of measurement before you start will make sure that your brain isn't playing tricks on you. And if you're outside, you just do it the same way. It's obviously far easier on a photo to go, oh, a third, a third, a third. But outside, you'd have your arms straight, hold your pen, close one eye, and then put your thumb where the measurement is and measure across. The reason you have that straight arm is if you bend your arm, well, maybe it's a little bit bent one time, more bent the other, a bit straighter, and you're not comparing like with like. Whereas if it's totally straight, unless your arms shrink and grow, which I doubt they do, then that will mean you're being consistent. Those third marks in, that should really help us with our placement. And again, we know that that wheel is taller than it is long. So let's start with the wheel and we'll go out from there. Looking at horizontals is good as well. So if we look at, say, where that wheel comes compared to this wheel, it's somewhere about there. If we look at where the back wheel comes compared to the front wheel and this wheel, it's higher up. Say our tricky little brain, bless it, does like to confuse us. It says, I know what a car looks like. It looks like this, draw that. And that might not be what you've got in front of you. That angle, I really feel like it should be sort of going down. I guess because I'm sort of comparing it to that. And my head is just telling me, no, you're drawing it wrong. But I'm not, so let's put it in. And again, my head is telling me that this front grille is huge, I guess because it's looking prominent. But if we compare, say, the height of that to the height of our wheel, it's about 2/3. Yep. So it's just a really good thing to do is to compare and challenge yourself. You know, am I seeing this right? Is my brain playing tricks on me? Can I really believe what my eyes are telling me? Love these headlights. Aren't they fabulous? So we look and that headlight is, this one is sort of up to the top there. We've then got this amazingly gorgeous arch which comes down to about there. I've only had a couple of goes in this car. So it's my brother-in-law's, and well, it's quite scary because it doesn't have seat belts. It's legal to have on the UK road because it never had seat belts, but oh my goodness, that feels funny because you're so used to putting seat belts on. And what else is funny about it? The seats are tiny. Did people have tiny bottoms in the old days? I don't know. I don't think I've got a particularly large bottom, but God, it's a squash. You've got to like your fellow driver because you're really close to them. But you get a lot of smiles and a lot of looks when you're driving around in this car. Oh, another thing to look is where that comes. So sort of that angle. We've got that there, but then we've got the number plate, which is the original, sort of going upwards. We've got little lights. Sort of there. We're looking and seeing that the centre of the wheel is very much not the centre. So that means we can get that right. There's something going on there. Have I got that low enough? Give or take, I reckon those are the proportions. Don't want to forget the wing mirror. Sorry, Pete's tried to keep this fairly original, but there are some things like, well, like not having seatbelts, but there are some things like a wing mirror you really do miss. Obviously, you're not speeding along in this thing, and you need to know quite how long the queue of traffic is behind you, maybe. Let's just look where that centre line is as well. And I may make that hood ornament a bit bigger. I actually have the picture on my iPad here because it's quite exposed and our printer is being a bit naughty, so it wasn't very good. Might leave out, say, the mirror on the rear view mirror there on the windscreen, because I'm not sure it's adding anything. Just looking where. There you go. Having sketched it out, I've grabbed a few fine liner pens. They come in different widths, so 0.1, 0.5, 0.7. I've just grabbed a handful and let's see what we're going to do. This isn't very large, so let's start with a 0.3. And now we're going to try and keep our lines pretty loose. And start to go over our underdrawing, because we know that this will disappear when we put lots of watercolour on top. So we can just crisp things up and add in extra details that we start to observe, because the joyful thing is that the more you look, the more you see. So do not take your underdrawing as gospel. Think of how you're holding your pen, trying to keep a certain amount of looseness in your line. Starting to observe more. So there's a rim, you've got the wall of the tyres. And I like to challenge myself constantly. Say, is that what I can see? Do I need to change anything? How can I make this better? So that is like there. And I'm really concentrating now, so I will go quiet. I'm not going to get too caught up in details at the moment, because we've got a long way to go. Yeah, I think I've got that wrong. So because that hood ornament is important, I think I will make it a tiny bit, a few percentage bigger than it is in reality. Can't honestly see what's going on under here, and if you can't see, let's not just make it up. Now, guess you have to ask yourself the question, how accurate do you want to be? So, do I want every spoke to be in exactly the right place so that an engineer and a Morris enthusiast would look at this and think, oh, that's right? Or am I happy that maybe a few of them are just in slightly more random places? And I think possibly that's the way I'm going to go. And if I was sketching this from real life, would I have time to be that accurate? Don't know, probably not. Too caught up in that. I think I'm going to stop and get some colour on. When I go out sketching, I love using these little Viviva colour sheets because they are so portable. Usually I'd use them with a water brush if I'm outside, but I have the luxury of being in my studio, so I'm going to use these. It's got a lovely range of these reds, nice deep pink there, that crimson, which I think would be super. Got some lovely orange for its little indicators, and it's, oh gosh, look at the state of that. This slate black is lovely. It's more grey than a black. It's worth, and it's quite obvious, or more obvious on the printout of my photo, that my head is saying, oh, but those bumpers and the running boards, they're black. No, they're not. They're really pale. So we need to make sure they stay pale, and there's some lovely blue reflected from the sky in there. Yes, the wheels and the undercarriage is quite black, but actually that is really pale. That's pale. We've got this lovely red, spots of orange. I might pick up some orange in the wheel hubs. So again, challenge yourself. Do not think, ooh, that's black, I'll paint it black. There is a big difference. Oh, I think I'm going to actually struggle here. I pretty much used up the paint that I've got. Well, that's fine. When you are outside painting, you do end up having to compromise. You've never got the perfect colour, the best brush. It just, you haven't. And part of the joy of painting on location is that you improvise, and maybe you come up with some rather good things. So I'm not trying to colour inside the lines, and I'm not deliberately just being incompetent here. I think it's rather lovely to let colours merge and mingle and see where it takes you. Isn't that a beautiful colour? So that is deep pink. Let's put some crimson in there because it is a bit too pink. I'll let some of that colour just go for a wander. And I know it looks like a mess at the moment, but don't worry. It will come together, I hope. When you're outside and it does look like utter mess, I have to say that's always the point when people come to look at your work and you're like, oh my lord, it looks like a mess. I do know what I'm doing, honest I do. And you can see them sort of smiling to themselves and thinking, oh poor dear. Let's get some, whoa, that's a strong blue. Wasn't expecting it to be quite that strong. But hey, why not? Wanted a little bit of a reflection. Let's bring some of that down. Oh yes, we said some lovely orange. Let's have a look through. Say these really are on their last legs. I have used them a lot. Oh, that's nice. And actually I really like the orange and the blue, complementary colours. So let's bring some orange in elsewhere. Like how that's spreading around. Got some of that white. Doopy doopy doo. We can always add more colour later if we want to. What you can do as well, if you want to, is just use a little bit of spatter just to loosen things up. If you don't like spatter and think it's a lazy way of doing it, do you know, that's fine. And I might just give it some gravel to sit on. I need to let that dry, and if I was in that pub, I'd either be nipping to the loo or getting another drink. It's a beautiful warm summer's day, perhaps it would already be dry. So the colour is pretty much dry. Obviously, if you're outside, you might have to not be quite as fussy. And now we can grab our brush pens and calm some of this down. Brush pens are brilliant when you're outside because it's a way of getting tone onto the paper without adding extra water. So you can use the brush end of it to sort of darken things down. It's probably a good idea to not go too dark too soon and just build up a bit of tone. So I'm looking where the darkest areas are, under the running boards, maybe at the front here. And these brush pens are great because they're transparent, you know, you can still see the colour through them. They go on really quickly and it's a super way of just adding a little bit of tone without the weight of that water. And say I want to work between the spokes, it's also great for that. So say I put a line there and a line there, it gives the impression that there's more sort of spoke action going on behind. We've got all this lovely chrome, so we can start to develop some of the reflections. Rather like what's going on with the tyres, so let's not cover all that up. We might want to also get a bit of shadow under the car. So I did that, and you can see that the shadow actually is far softer. Remember I said these were very water soluble? I can just run my brush along there and soften off that lovely shadow straight away and make it far more sort of believable. Obviously that now has added water. I just wanted to show you just how water soluble they are. They do layer as well, so you can go over things multiple times. And another thing that you can do, again, so let's look at the number plate. Sort of use them in a negative way, like that. Now, if when I've done that, I look and think, do you know, that wasn't dark enough, well, I can go darker very easily. And you can actually use pens, a lighter pen over the top to blend that in as well. So these brush pens are super versatile. This grill is sort of honeycombed. I'm not going to attempt to do honeycomb, but I might put in that sort of hatching. And then again use one of my paler brushes to smudge some of that, to blend it a little and stop it looking quite so clunky. It's always worth remembering that by going dark behind, it will make other things look lighter. So by going dark behind the number plate, it immediately makes that look a bit lighter. Some of those reflections on there. Say you've got some stray lines that you don't like, so look round the little mascot. We can actually blend that away with some clean water. I'm coming back to that hood ornament with my fine liner. That's what I'm doing next. And I'm starting to add finer markings. There's another badge here, and I'm going to put a little more detail. As I look, I can see that lovely chrome. I can see the edges here. There's sort of lines across the headlights. I think those are worth putting in. Some of the bodywork and some of these little details, like, I don't know, the knob bit on top of the bumper is just fun to put in. And there are little bolts keeping it in place. They could be fun to put in. You want to put some of the tread of the tyres. Now, how much detail you do want to put in place, only you can tell. And that might be, how much time you've got if you're outside, how much inclination you've got if you're inside. Press studs round. Sometimes just putting some of the little bolts and things is good. Remembering the back of the car is further away, so you might want less detail there. Our Tombow pens, just to work in a little bit more. Let's gravel and bits for it to be sitting on. That helps bring some of the front towards us. This tyre we want to really come towards us. Like that. Got some spatter there, but we can change some of the colours of those. And that just will bring that corner forward. Where we want to darken things, I might use a little bit of hatching. I wouldn't usually do this, but I've got a white acrylic pen giving good shake to mix up that ink. Just putting in a few highlights that I may have lost. I mean, pens aren't always super opaque, so you might either have to do a few layers or just accept that if you've lost that white, you're never getting it back fully. If you haven't got one of these pens, well, you can certainly do without, or you could use like a jelly roll pen or a very thin brush with some white gouache or whatever opaque white you've got that can just get some of those highlights back if you feel that that's going to add to the story. But if you don't need to do that, it's even better. And the thing that is shouting out to me, I don't like that little mark there. And I think this would look nice with a little bit of the red and blue coming into the black of the tyre. And maybe with some pale hints of that into the gravel on the front. Maybe a tiny bit of the blue would be no bad thing. And here I'm just using a little bit of that orange under the car to give it some land to sit on, stand on. And I feel we should quit while we're ahead and call it a day.